Stalker 2 is broken, but for some of you, that'll actually be good news. If you've been playing Stalker 2, you've likely encountered some bugs or performance issues already, but stuff is happening even beyond that. We're seeing certain features removed from the Steam page of Stalker 2, leading to concern that A-Life 2 isn't even in this game. This crypto branch was spotted on SteamDB, which has gotten all kinds of speculation, but thankfully, when it comes to all of this and even a bit more, the devs have been quick to acknowledge and respond to many of the fan concerns and questions, so we actually have many answers on what's going on with a lot of this and when we could start to expect fixes. Because yes, the devs over at GSC have laid out their update plan for Stalker 2 and what we can expect to be fixed soon. But what is easily the biggest complaint among Stalker 2 players right now is the missing or just lacking A-Life system. Stalker 2 was meant to launch with A-Life 2. This would basically simulate the world around you. Enemy groups will fight over territory, migrate and capture new locations, and if things go bad or their numbers start to dwindle, they could even retreat away from combat. This is really what gave the Stalker games that special realistic combat feel when it came to NPC dynamics and movement. It made it feel like those NPCs were actually alive with objectives, as opposed to most games where their enemies are just fighting you because they can see you. Except with Stalker 2, it almost seemed like this was gone. A-Life 2 was removed as a feature from the Steam store page just before release, and now mentions advanced AI systems in its place, and in actual gameplay terms, you'll find lots of enemies spawning right behind you. Many comparisons to those Cyberpunk 2077 police spawn days are being brought up, and lots of players are finding that even after you go through that grueling gunfight, clear out a location, and start to loot things, all of a sudden a bunch of additional enemies will spawn and could instantly tap you. This made even more difficult by the fact that enemies just seem to magically know your whereabouts and could potentially even see through walls. Yeah, there are definitely some problems with what's going on with enemy AI and really just combat spawns and combat in general right now. That dynamic NPC movement just kind of seems to be outright gone, to the point where some fans are going as far as to say this isn't even a Stalker game anymore. Thankfully, this is a bug, and it seems like there may be actually two separate things going on here, making this entire situation quite frustrating to play with right now. First off, why is A-Life gone from the Steam page? That is obviously very concerning, especially when it seems like it's not really working in game. And it basically seems like this is just a marketing decision that had some rather unfortunate timing. The A-Life listing on Steam was changed to advanced artificial intelligence systems that will keep engaged even the most hard-boiled players. And as per GSC, this was changed because it was just an update of a marketing text aimed at newer players to avoid the repetition in text. In no way were we trying to hide it. Unfortunately, there are issues with A-Life right now. We know about them and we are fixing them at the moment. You're going to see quite a few answers like this throughout this video. GSC has this really nice dev Q&A feature on their Discord, so take advantage of that. They've been very active responding to fan complaints. But as they mentioned on the end there, yes, thankfully, A-Life is just bugged. I've seen multiple questions about A-Life issues. There are several known issues with A-Life 2.0 system that we are aware of and are working on fixes/improvements. We know that the system is very important to the zone having an immersive atmosphere, and we will do our best to fix the known issues. And thankfully, there was some further follow-up to this, fans really asking to what degree of improvement can we expect for A-Life, to which we do here, we're going to make visible improvements, A-Life will feel better, we are working hard to fix it. So if you've been playing Stalker 2 and just really struggling to get into it thanks to some of that enemy AI, this should be some really positive news, because it sounds like A-Life is just straight up not really working right now. It's rather hard to gauge to what degree things are broken, what should A-Life 2 actually look like while it's working, but even beyond that, it seems like GSC may have turned up enemy spawns to help address this, which is in turn causing more problems. Yeah, enemies aren't moving in the typical sense due to A-Life being broken. So as opposed to having many areas just being completely desolate of enemies, it seems like right now there's basically a band-aid fix where they're making it so more enemies will spawn in these areas, which in turn is creating an even worse situation where it just feels like enemies are spawning all around you. But then once A-Life is fixed, some of those spawns should be turned down and hopefully everything comes together a lot better. Unfortunately, no timeline was provided as far as when we can expect a fix, but in their launch announcement, GSC did lay out their update plans. Nevertheless, Stalker 2 is a massive game. We understand that in such a game, there may still be rough edges. We literally haven't released anything of this scale before. We're absolutely committed to being here, monitoring your feedback, and quickly fixing any issues that need our attention. And the first days after release, we'll be working with hotfixes, rolling them out as precisely as possible, but as frequently as we can. Then we'll switch to larger updates that include constant improvements. The There will also be free in-game content. We'll share its roadmap later in December. We have big plans for the Stalker universe. In a way, today is both the return and the beginning of a brand new journey. So initially, we'll largely be seeing hotfixes to address some of these major issues, but then they will transition over to more traditional and likely larger scale updates that will come a bit less frequently. There isn't exactly an ETA on the first hotfix, but we do get some ideas of what it'll actually contain. Just before release, GSC reached out to reviewers mentioning how they fixed 1,125 bugs in between when the review period began and then right as it ended. So that was 1,000 bugs fixed in just a couple of weeks. And on one hand, this creates this weird situation where, due to this day zero patch coming out right at the end of the review period, it seems like a lot of the bugs mentioned by these reviewers are already fixed, and they just didn't retest the game with the updated version to update their reviews. And in this email, GSC lays out that several more major fixes are coming in one major patch right after release. This kind of goes against what was publicly stated, where they said they're just going to be doing hotfixes, but maybe that first hotfix will be a bit larger, and it'll contain all of this. So of course that quest stuff, but also a fleshlight keybind that currently just doesn't exist in the game right now, as well as Stalker 2 currently has a memory leak issue around character faces that'll basically just tank your performance. And speaking of performance, outside of A-Life, that is probably one of the other biggest complaints with the game right now is performance and really instability and crashing. Earlier today, Digital Foundry released their breakdown on this. I'll cover some aspects of what they talk about here, but please go check out this video. I'll have it linked down below. They had a video ready to launch at the review embargo, but since that day zero update was released, instead of going live, they delayed their video a day and retested many aspects of this game with the updated version. And while yes, there are still problems, things are dramatically better. So I would ask you reward the reviewer who actually put in the extra time to make sure the review is correct, as opposed to just clicking on those videos that were first. Digital Foundry did find major CPU bottlenecks throughout Stalker 2 though. Here, running to the first town, they are capped at or under 100 FPS, and this is wholly because of a CPU limitation. Frame times are also spiking here. This is what gives that game the rough feeling, despite the fact that your FPS seems like it should be fine. You might have over 60 FPS, but things feel stuttery or laggy. That's frame times. Although one hopeful aspect of this, Digital Foundry does state that these frame times were actually twice as bad prior to the day zero patch. So huge improvements were already being made and will likely continue. And this only does get worse as you actually make it into town, where even top tier CPUs are simply being pushed to their limits due to some of the NPCs in towns. And this will apply to consoles as well, where instead of frame time issues, they just got a flat 5-second freeze when walking into the initial town. And the reality is, Stalker 2 is CPU taxing across the board, and this will be heavily influenced by the number of NPCs around you. As a result of this, Digital Foundry actually recommends playing on quality mode if you're on Xbox, because the game has a much easier time hitting the 30 FPS threshold, but consistently struggles to hit the 60 FPS threshold of performance mode, although freezes do still occur on quality mode, but the rest of the game is performing a bit better on that mode. That is just a snippet of the Digital Foundry video. Again, please go give it a watch for yourself. I'll have it linked down below. But yeah, as of right now, Stalker 2 has major CPU limitations. That's why many of you are experiencing poor performance, although we could start to see this getting addressed very soon. Someone on the Discord asked about a fix for some of the current performance issues, and the devs did reply, working on the first hotfix, which to me makes it sound like the first hotfix will be largely focusing on some of the major FPS or stutter issues, and likely further improvements on CPU optimization, just like what we saw in the day zero patch. The fact that they were already able to get frame times cut in half with that day zero patch definitely makes me hopeful for this one. And for those of you on consoles, one of the other major issues is with controllers. Stick drift is a current problem that plenty are reporting, and the devs have responded to that as well, saying it's being worked on. A lack of dead zones on consoles and for controllers is another major complaint. The combination of stick drift and no dead zones is making aiming in Stalker 2 on controllers considerably more difficult, but the devs are working on dead zones, so seemingly a dead zone option will come at some point, although we don't really have further details. The ultra-wide implementation for Stalker 2 also has issues. It seems to just zoom you in improperly, but the devs are aware of this and are also working on a fix. And although though, we still don't know exactly what this test crypto branch is. Technically, you can name branches anything on SteamDB, so it doesn't really matter. But of course, seeing test crypto in a game that had a surprising amount of pre-order rewards has made many fans concerned that crypto or NFTs could come to Stalker 2 at some point. We know they're adding multiplayer and mods down the line. Could it fit in somewhere there? Thankfully, GSC put a hard stop to all of that speculation, saying, we are not adding crypto/NFT functionality to the game. And right now, Stalker 2 is just thriving. The game has very positive reviews overall from both critics and fans, even despite the plethora of technical issues, and this player count is incredibly strong. It already passed the Dragon Age numbers from a couple of weeks ago, and considering the Wednesday release date, I wouldn't be shocked if the Steam all-time high has a little bit higher to go and will likely hit it this Friday or Saturday. So even despite some of the launch problems with Stalker 2, the developers are definitely hard at work, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see the first hotfix drop potentially this week, and likely followed by several more smaller hotfixes in the weeks to come. And mods are already here as well, so get subscribed because believe me, I have tons of mod content planned for this game.